Finance can be messy, but don't worry, we clean it up with fun, facts, and maybe a little sarcasm. Welcome to the Financial Sandbox. Let's get into it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for regular real talk in the Sandbox. My guest today is Mitchell Chernock. Now, Mitchell has a really interesting background, and one of the things that I've learned about him is that he and I don't always we don't always like push the client to make a decision on either selling or getting a loan. It's really about understanding the client, getting to know them, and sort of finding out what their needs are and getting them to go that direction. And one of the things I've learned about you, Mitchell, is after 40 years in real estate finance, when you look back, what has changed the most? The money, the deals, or the mindset of the investors?
Well, that's a great question. I'm gonna jump to one small thing and then pull that up in terms of what's changed. Buyer and seller agreed to take care of the property, basically. That is a one-page real estate contract from 1980. Back-to-back page, not a bunch of disclosures. Seller agrees to make sure the property's in the right place. Buyer agrees to get financing and close, right?
Right.
Today we have 20, 30, 40 pages. We have disclosures. One of the biggest changes for me, and even going through purchasing real estate myself in the 1970s, that 1978 to 1980 market, which I don't know that you would have been a part of, was kind of a blow it up market. We had $60,000 houses in Walnut Creek go to 120. Sounds kind of funny, right?
Yeah.
And so the one of the things that's changed is we've had these time frames where houses didn't sell. They flew off the shelf like Cabbage Patch dolls, and people paid exorbitant prices for them because they wanted to be in on the deal.
Right.
And those are home buyers, not typically investors. Investors will wait a little bit.
Right.
But still, like the San Jose market, the East Bay market, San Mateo market, you're still up against sometimes realtors doing something that they've never done. And this is, I think, a big change. Grossly underlisting property in this bizarre idea that it's their fiduciary relationship to get the most for the seller. And I always say this, you can do that. You have a moral and ethical responsibility to your community to tell the truth. And selling a $1.6 million house and listing it for $1,010,000 is not the way to get it done.
Right. Right. It's what I see every day. Yeah, it's what we see every day. I live in the Oakland Hills, and a couple blocks from me, a house that sold in 2023. When it sold in 2023, it was on the market for $995. It sold for $137, I think it was. It just went on the market 2 years and a couple of days after the owners bought it, and it went back on the market at $998. And I'm thinking, here's the problem with that for me, is there are many people in the community who think, wow, maybe I'll get this house for $1 million, maybe $1,050,000. But it's that realtor that's working with them that's going to say, actually, it sold for 1.4 almost. They're probably going to sell again for 1.4. And that buyer is going to be angry because they feel that the realtor has misled them with false marketing.
I think there is another piece in there. One of my great realtor friends said to me, where is your client responsibility? Where's the realtor responsibility? But here's what we're doing.
Right.
People are jumping on Zillow, jumping on Redfin, jumping on realtor.com and Home Light or whatever that is, and they're seeing these houses listed. Oftentimes they don't have an agent. They're calling somebody, getting a referral and saying, hey, this is a great deal. And the realtor, I believe every agent that sells every house should do their own comparative market analysis.
Absolutely.
It's like you call me up, Herb, and you say, hey, man, I found a triplex in Oakland for 1.1 million. I said, no, you don't. No, you didn't. Like, yeah, I did. No, I wish you did. But the income on this property is $15,000 a month, and it supports about a $1.3 million mortgage, which makes it about $1.7, $1.8 million purchase. But real estate agents, there's something else that happens in there. Let's just say that it's $100,000 difference. That's still 2 or 3 different levels of buyers, right? So if something is 1.4 million and you have 10% down, you barely hit and able to do that and do a conforming high balance loan limit.
Right.
But
right.
5 million, where you're thinking you're getting that house for 1.2, you are eliminated before you start.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So we're taking a whole series of buyers, 5, 10, 15 buyers, and telling 5, 10, or 15 of those buyers, you don't mean anything. Right. This is a highest and best. And I think those terms, by the way, highest and best, are the 2 most derogatory words you can get in a counteroffer.
Yeah.
Have some guts. Real estate agent, write a counter contract that says this is what you want. But when you've got 5 buyers and say, just come in higher, who are you competing against?
Right. Exactly. Yourself. Yeah. 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 I think too, this week I had a conversation with a seller, and as you know, my specialty is 1031 exchange. And on the financial services side for Delaware Statutory Trust transition, my client is in his 80s. His wife they're 2 years apart. So they're both in their 80s. And there were a number of repairs that needed to be done to the building. So their concern was, gosh, I don't know if we're going to sell. We may have to do this. We may have to make these repairs. We have to change. And I sat with them and I said, actually, this is an as-is sale. You're selling it the way it is today. And you're not remodeling the kitchens. You're not replacing the decks. You're not putting a new roof on. You're not putting a new driveway in. You're selling it the way it is as it is today. And I was talking to a friend the next morning about this, and he said to me, where this building is located, it's on a great lot. A buyer may come in, pay each tenant $200,000 to move out, and they're going to tear it down and put 20 units there.
Very possibly. It's interesting because I put it in my bio for you, and the amount of people that actually understand the first part of what you said, because when you're even in your 60s, I know a lot of people who are full-time engaged with their family, their work, they want to retire. They own 5 or 6 rental properties, and you brought it up, man. And I don't participate, but I love to direct people into the potential idea of a Delaware Statutory Trust, because you still own real estate and you have the one thing, and I'm sorry, Bay Area property managers, they must, in the back, you hire somebody up front that's completely rude, right? Mm-hmm. And then the people in the back are saying, I'm not going to fix that, or the seller won't do it. In a DST, one of the only exchange vehicles you have in the entire country to receive income, depletion or depreciation, have somewhat of an exit strategy for somebody who doesn't want to manage real estate, it's just a fabulous way to go.
Right. It is. And you basically are saying you're going to get your cash flow. You're still going to get all the tax benefits of owning real estate, but you don't have the tenants' toilets and trash.
Well, I like that. The 3 T's.
Yeah, the 3 T's go right out the door. It's my favorite saying. I want to talk to you about lending really quick. I want to change the subject a little bit. A lot of people think lending is just rates and terms, but in reality, it's also about judgment. What do you think separates the good lender from someone who simply is quoting numbers and just putting a loan together for someone without considering their entire financial situation? Where do you think things have changed?
So there's a balance. I'll make some people happy and I'll piss some people off with what I'm going to say. The thing is you go to a discount lender. They're big. They give you better fees. And so I had a situation that happened. I got all of my employment information, talked to my client, and this is actually happening right now. And she calls me and says, I didn't tell you something. And I said, what didn't you tell me? She says, well, I have a full-time job. I'm on contract and my contract expires in May. And just within that hour, our verification of employment came in and showed her as temporary. So here's the thing is that there are 2 lenders in the state of California, and I don't broker unless I have to. And when I'm brokering, it is for you, period. It sure as heck ain't for me. I not
Right.
only take a huge haircut, and so does my company, but then you wake up in your home and I'm the referral agent.
Right.
I'm giving this woman a loan right now that is 100% one of the very few. We're not even allowed to list where she works. 15 or 20% down, great credit score, whatever the interest rate is, whatever the fees are, and you close.
Right.
And here's the flip side of that, which a lot of people, I got 4 of these in the last month, 4 property inspection waivers. I got a PIW on her on her DU to qualify her, and I can't use it. We have to get an appraisal because we're
So
going
let's go back a second here. PIW.
property inspection waiver.
Explain the acronyms for the audience.
Sure. Sorry. The property inspection waiver is a very coveted event.
Correct.
When you're putting a certain amount of money down, but also if the property has had activity on it within the last so many years, 2 to 5 years, I believe is the algorithm, you
Right.
could end up where it comes back and says, an appraisal is not necessary. You meet the inspection requirements for a property inspection waiver, and that saves the client between $600 and $1,000.
Right. Right.
But you asked me about the difference. About 20 to 25% of my business is rescue. And I have just this great company I work with at American Pacific, where on Saturdays, and I invite my realtors and I invite my lender friends, I don't care who you are or where you're at, I have underwriting for 6 hours, and it's a phone underwriter. I call them to say hello sometimes because nobody calls them. You give me a scenario on a Saturday, my deal's falling apart. Let me find out. I get you an answer, and I might be calling your lender and saying, here's how to fix it. Or I end up with the transaction.
Sure.
So you have to have products. American Pacific is usually in the top 10 in our sphere. But one of the things that we have, because we're 100% agency, is we have multiple non-QM lenders that will do loans down to $200,000, which means that you can do a DSCR on a $400,000 house and go non-QM and have 10 rental properties, not list any of their income, show their mortgages. If the property cash flows to 0.75, it's one rate, which means that you're not covered. But if your rent's $2,000 and your mortgage is $2,000 and you've got decent credit and you have an appraisal, you're closing that investor transaction.
Right. Right. And DSCR for the audience is debt service coverage ratio. So just trying to keep the acronyms to a minimum.
It's strange to me that I get why they're using that term, but that's the term you and I would use for a 100-unit building or a 5-unit building. Because the lender's going to come in and say, look, the mortgage is this big, and the algorithm says the payment is this big. The algorithm says the mortgage is this, and you can't change that. Very few lenders are going to allow anybody to have a negative cash flow on multifamily or commercial properties. But in that 1 to 4 unit world, where somebody's got 20 or 25% down in decent credit, you can come in, not show your tax returns from your other rentals. And by the way, this isn't some funky financing where you had all this crazy stuff happening in 2006 and 2010. These are 30-year fixed rate mortgages that are quite often almost priced exactly as if you went full doc and qualified.
Yes.
That's the mystery about it. It's beautiful to do that.
Yeah.
Keep it simple. Take the tax returns out of the file.
So when you sit across from that borrower, whether it's on the phone, on a Zoom, or in person, or investor, what tells you that they really understand risk versus simply being optimistic?
When I first got started in the industry, I had some amazing trainers and people. The first company I really worked at where I got trained well was Mason McDuffie Mortgage in the 80s. Herb Tasker and his team. There's all kinds of acolytes of Herb Tasker out there, and Mason McDuffie is back. But I learned that when you're communicating with somebody, they have to be able to say to you what you gave them, that information. It doesn't have to be the same way, but it's, here's what I just told you. I'd like you to give me your version of what I said so that we're on the same page.
Right.
Especially in today's marketplace, and not discounting what's happened in the last week, I come in on a Monday morning and I can't get a hold of my client, and interest rates are exactly where we want them or better, or the market's getting crashed and we're closing in 10 days, I'm locking that loan.
Yeah.
I would rather lock it and ask for forgiveness. So, but I explain that to my clients that I may be doing things without you because my experience says that if I don't do it, it will cost you.
Right. Right. So that sort of brings me to the question I have about sophisticated borrowers. What do sophisticated borrowers understand about financing strategy that new investors often miss?
Well, the first thing they understand, and I'm having a conversation with them, let's imagine that you don't know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's imagine together that you and I are going to be buying this property. And I use that all the time. Hey, Herb, we're buying this property together. How do you see this deal working? And then they explain to you, and quite often the sophisticated buyer who owns 10 properties, they didn't know anything about how to buy those properties. They had an agent that helped them do it right. They had a lender that helped them do it right. And they've come to know in that experience that there are certain things they don't need to do.
Yeah.
Even the guy that, we all have these clients, it's like, what's your salary? Well, I make 500,000, I'm bonused $800,000 a year, but I don't want to show you my tax returns because I've got multiple properties and other companies. They know that they're going to come to me and say, look, I'm putting the most I can down that will allow me to do this without having to qualify from my income. I want the property to qualify. Now, and I'm talking about investors, though. Regular buyers, I have this thing. If you're going to call me and tell me and say, hey, by the way, when you say, Mitchell, I just want you to know I'm self-employed, in the back of my mind is, so you're not reporting all of your income, you're writing off income, and you don't have enough income because you want my underwriter to know that you're lying to the IRS, but I need to give you a loan. Is that correct? Right?
Right. Do I have that straight?
But here's the thing. A lot of people don't even know that they actually qualify. They think because they're self-employed, they don't.
Right.
Right. And I'll look at, anybody who's been doing this as long as I have, and maybe even just the last few years, if you've been trained on tax returns, there's income in there. There's depreciation. I had a guy who spent $50,000 on a rental in 2024. $49,000 of that was a new foundation on the front of the house. That's a one-time write-off. We added it back and gave him the income. It's all about doing that. But for the regular buyer, please understand, I tell people this, being self-employed is a beautiful opportunity to create wealth, not to find a way to get out of paying income taxes.
Right.
Those are two different people.
Yeah. So in your experience, kind of, when does the cheapest money wind up being the most expensive money?
That's a great question. When does the cheapest money become the most expensive money? I think if we're going to, let's just use interest rates as an accelerant, like gasoline.
Sure.
When you have a Fed chair like Jerome Powell, after we have an administration that puts out $4 trillion of funny money and they lower interest rates, cheap money is an accelerant. That $500,000 house is now $600,000. Hey, you got a 3% mortgage. I'm so excited for you. But you just paid $100,000 more. It appraised for $20,000 less. So you came up with $20,000 in cash. What did you really get? Right? Inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. And this whole country, but specifically where you and I are, California, we have so many regulations on building that it could cost $100,000 to build a house, and you haven't even stuck a shovel in the ground. That doesn't even count the land cost.
Right.
So it's, I think if we remove the word cheap and put in cost valuation, because nothing is cheap, really.
Right. Yeah.
That word cheapens what you're getting.
Yeah.
If we can sit down and say, hey, look, over the next 5 years, Here's a rent versus own calculation. Here's an owning calculation. Yeah, you're getting a 7% rate and a 6% market because of X, or you're getting a 5% rate because rates have gone down. But here's the outcome of going, say, to the East Bay and buying a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house that should be $500 or $600 and paying $750 for it. Your cheap financing is allowing you to buy a property that you probably shouldn't buy, maybe. But also, cheap money makes the prices higher, period.
Yeah. So you've done hundreds of renovation loans on 1 to 4 unit properties, right?
Yep.
What have those properties taught you about human nature? Or the gap between vision and execution?
So really quick, I have to tell a story like this because opportunity and learning all go together. And when you're talking about renovating a property, because I try to tell every buyer I've got, because I love renovation, every buyer I have, please try to find the worst house.
Yeah.
In 1994, it's like July or August, I'm standing in a phone booth, right? Because I got a page about a pest report that blew up a piece of property. The guy on the phone next to me had just started working with a mortgage company that started offering the FHA 203K. I hung up, he tapped me on the shoulder. He says, I think you need to go to Carlsbad for a couple of days. I'll pay for you to go there and learn about this. And within a year, we were doing 5 to 10 renovations a month. But here's the thing about renovation. In today's market, you have to use real value. So we have a $500,000 or $600,000 home in Concord or Vallejo or maybe Pittsburgh, Antioch, and you walk in, and let's say that this house is a serious $50,000 worth of work. And of course, the seller wants you to buy it as is at market and pay the commission, right?
Right.
But then you're thinking to yourself, hey, this is on almost a quarter of an acre. I could add a bedroom and a bath. And now you're into this thing for $150,000. Maybe the seller helps you, actually capitulates, knowing that it's their misery they're trying to sell you. So now you've got a $500,000 deal at $650,000. Put 3.5% down FHA, have a $150,000 construction account, bring in a real contractor, get the work done. The deal closes 100% as is, unless there's dangerous chemicals, and the borrower gets draws, and you move into a beautiful, almost brand new house instead of buying the $700,000 or $800,000 house down the street. And one more thing about, I do additional dwelling units as well. Everything I do that's construction renovation is referred to as ARV, after renovation value. So if you buy that $500,000 house, get $150,000 extra construction on a 30-year fixed rate, it might come back appraised at $700,000 or $750,000.
Sure.
Here's the beautiful part about the FHA portion. That $650,000 acquisition cost, $500,000 plus the $150,000 when you're going FHA.
Right.
There's a 10% evaluation bump. You come in, the appraisal is $610,000. In a regular conventional deal, you're coming in with an extra $40,000 to make it work and funding the construction escrow. In FHA, a $600,000 evaluation is $660,000, which means you're still based on $650,000 and coming in with $23,000 down, $17,000, $18,000 closing. So you're still under $50,000 to buy that house with a full construction escrow and maybe a new bedroom and a bathroom.
It's interesting. A lot of times when I'm selling real estate and I'm working with a buyer, for example, I always say, look, okay, I know you love this fully renovated house down the street. It's great. It's wonderful. Let's go look at the other house a block over. It's $110,000 less. It needs a new kitchen, possibly a new bathroom. But the upside on the renovation and value for you and the pride of ownership and development commits that buyer to that house so much more in the long run. It's interesting just to get them to reconsider. And sometimes they will reconsider. In my history and my experience in real estate, sometimes they'll say, gosh, this is great. We saw a house with a similarly framed kitchen that we have a photo of. Maybe we need to renovate that kitchen like the other house that we saw. So it sort of spawns the creative juices of that buyer to really commit and want to create a home, a place where they want to make home.
Here's what I love this term. I use the term all the time because people look at me and say, what does that mean? So you can spend $1 and you can buy a pin that says you're a realtor and you can take the oath. Or you can be a professional real estate agent. And here's what the professional real estate agent does. That house that's down the street that you're talking about, you call that listing agent. It's like, hey, Herb, it's Mitchell, American Pacific. I'm selling, let's say I'm the realtor. I want to know about the house. Hey, man, it needs a lot of work. I'm really looking for somebody to do it. I know there's a more beautiful house up the street. It's like, hey, I'm calling you for a purpose, Herb. I want my clients to look at your house. I'm going to make a promise to you that I'm going to do everything I can to have them there. And you're saying, wow, okay, that's cool. My clients come. I show them the beautiful house and I say, hey, I've got Herb. He's a real estate agent down the street. He's got another property. He really needs people to see this house. And we support our sellers and our agents. I'd like to take you and we're going to go. Now, there's something else about that, though. And I say this, if I give you a referral, I have 2 rules. One is if you're going to email property that you know exactly where it is and you're going to go see it, or that you've already seen it.
Yep.
And that you take the clients there. Never meet a client at a property. Because what are we? We're human beings. We want relationship. If I was an agent and I get into a car with somebody and they've got a little kid with them and I'm saying, wow, Sally's so cute. I remember when my great granddaughter was 5 years old, and they're looking at me like, you have great grandchildren? I said, yeah, they're both 15 now. One of them actually drives. It makes me crazy. She takes her other great grandparents to the doctor. But how do you have a relationship if you're not breaking bread or having coffee or having them in your car?
Yeah.
Our commitment is to our relationships with our clients, because when our clients buy something from us, they don't back out. When we sell them something, they feel sold and they walk around wondering, did I make the right decision? We want buyers. We don't want people that come in and say, well, convince me. I said, I'm going to give you enough information to convince yourself. I hate that saying no means yes, because that was a thing that had to do with us as guys. But it's really easy to flip that around. No is the middle letters of the word I know or I don't know. People say no when they don't have enough information, which also has to do with the dance of trust.
Right.
Get them to go look at the crappy house, my friends.
Absolutely. So with your level of experience, and let's not get into the many years, but what questions do you ask yourself now that you didn't know to ask earlier in your career?
I think I was always in this position. I wanted people to get into a home without asking them what their mission is. Is this a forever home? Is a house you're going to have for a couple of years because you're going to get a bonus and move, or you're just waiting for that job transfer to somewhere? Finding out more about what our buyers really want, and there's an age difference in that. If you do get some, I guess they call millennials, those 25 to 35-year-olds, and maybe they're on a double job, right? Wife works, makes about 80 or 90 grand. He works, makes 80. So they're making 180,000, but maybe they're both in super elevated positions. Hey, our goal is to get in with as little as possible and then buy another home 2 or 3 years from now. And right now in this marketplace where I'm looking at people's portfolios, I can look at a piece of property and say, geez, this is a nice house and you have a 3% mortgage on it. How long did you live here before you moved out of it? A year. Because those are from 2019, 20, 21, 22. Or they refinanced them and then moved out, which you're not supposed to do for under a year. But yeah, I think just really being far less of a salesperson and a better listener and finding out what people want. I know when people bite off more than they can chew.
Yeah.
But I'll ask people just the same, Herb, you qualify for an $800,000 mortgage. Tell me why we're looking at this $650,000 house. Hey, I went through this with my parents. We almost lost our home back in the meltdown. I'm going to underbuy right now. I'm going to see what owning a home really means to me. I don't know. I might not want to own a home. And that's the other thing. We're driving people into home ownership.
Yeah.
In the 50s, 60s, and 70s, renting a property meant you could be told by your boss to be in Biloxi, Mississippi on Monday, and you give 30 days notice and you're gone. You're not doing that if you own a property.
Right. So what this is, I think people talk about this is a good market. It's a weird market. This is a good deal. How do you define a good deal today, especially in this market where people are still chasing headlines instead of fundamentals, right? They're not doing what you were just talking about, right? Planning 6 months, a year, 2 years down the road, or looking at their current employment situation.
I think some of it is what you see. I don't want to live in that neighborhood. It's not ready yet. Or this house looks beautiful, but it's overpriced. What I'm seeing, though, are people making financial decisions and they're not taking care of their house, their bills, their car payments, all of these things. They're stacked up in debt. And then they make a decision to buy a home. And even as an investor, where, it's people will call me, I don't own a home yet, but I want to buy a fourplex and I want to put the money down and invest. And I'm saying, okay, sure. It's a $1.2 million fourplex. Let's get into this for about $300,000. Or since you don't own a home yet, why don't you put less than $50,000 down, go FHA and move into this puppy and have an investment property and find out what it's like to have tenants and learn. I don't ever encourage anybody to buy investment real estate without owning their own home, unless you know that you're going to be leaving. And I'm saying, hey, this house has to, if you're planning on getting transferred, let's get you into the right house, because you have to buy it correctly, to own it correctly, to rent it correctly. And if you want something, oh yeah, there's no way, dude, I'm leaving here, I'm going to Omaha, and then I'm coming back, and then I'm going to move back into my house, then you need to buy the correct property. And that's listening. What are their finances? I want to bring up something just so that people understand the nonsense about what's going on. And this is when interest rates are near zero or where they're at right now. The average car payment in the United States is between $900 and $1,200 a month. $900 is about $120,000 mortgage, and $1,200 is almost $180 to $200, depending on the interest rate.
Right.
You're buying a mortgage and driving it around so that you can't get a house. Stop doing that.
Yeah. It's interesting. I went to school in Southern California. I would see people driving around these really expensive cars and renting. I'd come back to the Bay Area. I'd see people who bought a home in Walnut Creek and they were driving a Honda Civic. Sure. That was 4 years old. And it was really this dichotomy that I would see in these two different markets, right? When someone comes to you and they're excited about that opportunity, what do you listen to before you even start discussing financing options?
So when I get on the phone with people, this is not your typical lending conversation, Joe and Mary. I want you to understand something. I don't have anything to sell you. I have products that you will want, need, and require to do this. What is your financial position right now? Tell me exactly where you're at. What worries you? What excites you? What excites you about what you're doing without me on the phone? What direction are you headed in? And then I can take some notes and understand that, because if their realtor knows that this couple is in the downside of what they want to do, and they're thinking, hey, 5 or 10 years from now, we want to retire, we want to figure out a way to pay this house off. It's not just a forever home, it's a financial calculation of how do I finish my life and start my life in this home. Those are things you have to know. But again, it comes down to that. Tell me about your life right now. Tell me about your job. Tell me about your employment. Tell me about your aspirations. Hey, I'm a self-employed electrician, but I've been doing this for 8 years. My company grosses $500,000 a year. I take $100,000 salary and I don't show losses. Fabulous. I know I'm talking to somebody, sorry folks, who's honest and wants to make sure that I know what's going on.
Sure.
And then always, I hate to say this, always on the backside, whether it's a man or a woman, when they say, oh, and by the way, my wife is a full-time nurse, it's like, great, well, you're qualified. Let's just figure out where you're going.
Well, I think it goes back to where I started in this conversation, where we talk to the client to really find out where are you at, right? And that's my conversation. I want to know more about the person before I start. And myself as an advisor that works with a lot of clients who are doing 1031 exchanges, what I want to know is, where do you see yourself 3 years, 5 years down the road? A lot of times I've got a client, they might be in their 60s, maybe they're in their 70s, and they say, well, we're going to buy another property. And when we sell this, and I said, great, what kind of loan are you going to get? Well, we're looking at a 5-year fixed or a 10-year fixed. I said, great, you're 67, wife is 68. Let's say you're doing a 10-year fixed. 10 years from now, you're going to be mid 70s, late 70s. Do you want to do a loan at that time? And that's when they go back and, oh, wait a minute. When I'm 78, am I going to want to start refinancing this property? And that's when a lot of my conversations really get into the 1031 exchange, the Delaware Statutory Trust that we talked about earlier, which we have both done. Tell me something. What do people most often get wrong, in your opinion, on the purpose of a 1031 exchange?
They don't. There are two things, which I learned this in my DST seminars that I go to. And they, first of all, if you're on title with somebody, you're not doing an exchange without that person, because you can't change title. And if your title is in a trust and you want to take it out of the trust, you can't do that, because the exchange is 100% linear, right? Everything in the original exchange has to be the same to the property you're going to. So if you have a mortgage, you can't go mortgage free in some circumstances. And that's the purpose of the DST. A lot of the DSTs are financed and some are cash, so that an investor with mortgages can exchange into a Delaware Statutory Trust and still have the premise of a mortgage that they had to move forward. I think most investors, the thing that they miss is they fall in love with property, especially newer investors. Mm-hmm. It's like, come on, it's down payment and cash flow, not down payment and location, because you wouldn't buy it if you didn't like the location to begin with. Right. And I see people buying break even or negative cash flow properties, and that to me it's a purchase where you're looking for appreciation. Investors who look only for appreciation are going to be paying every single month to have that appreciation. Yeah. Yeah. And one of these days, I don't think the market's really going to go backwards, but man, I wish it would stop. It just needs to slow down enough, because we all have buyers. My competitors have buyers. Those buyers can't purchase those properties because we've got 10 buyers sometimes trying to buy one instead of one or two. Right. And that's the other thing. It's a great question, even for an investor. Are you able to, and will you compete against other buyers in a multi-$1,000 counter offer, where you might not even know that the counter offer is a real one or imagined, because we don't know how many offers there are?
That's such a great question, and I want you to repeat it.
So I ask people, hey, you have $200,000 and you're looking at putting $175,000 down on this purchase. What if the property goes for $50,000 over and it's not going to appraise, or even if it does, are you willing to come up with that extra money? That's your cash asset. Oh gosh, Mitchell, you know what? We already checked. It's going to cost us $10,000 to move. It's going to cost us $20,000 to do some new furnishings and have the house painted inside when we move. We can't spend more than the $175 plus closing costs. Then this home, you cannot go for more than the actual listed purchase price to buy this home, or you may be out of money. And that,
Right.
and I know that there's so many facets in that.
Sure.
My main mission is to always have you waive the approval.
Hmm.
So people call me and say, hey, can I get pre-approved? No, because I do full approvals. I
Yeah.
try to talk to an underwriter about every client. I think about it. I did a transaction a few weeks ago, and my processor, Sherry, calls me and she says, hey, I said, what? She goes, I ran the DU on your clients and I put the address in because you asked me to do that. We have a property inspection waiver and we haven't written the contract. We're going in with no financing contingency and no appraisal contingency.
Right.
You have to be prepared up front.
Yeah. Yeah, you do. You do. So we were talking about longtime property owners. We're talking about owners who have tenants, toilets, and trash. How do you help them through the emotional side of letting go of direct ownership?
I'm not involved in much as other people would be as your realtor, but having owned a lot of property in my life, my wife did new home sales, so we always bought a house. By the way, I am one of those investors who sold probably before I should have. But hey, we all make mistakes.
Yep.
But I always try to make sure that anybody who's purchasing property, especially a real estate investor, knows exactly what they're expecting for their outcome.
Yeah.
And then tell me what that outcome is going to be. Because my business is to guide you through that and give you as much information as possible, because I want you to make a decision. And I've told people, I said, hey, you have to do this. The numbers work.
Yeah. Yeah. I've done the same. And really talking to people about, I had a situation a while back where the gentleman was 76 and he had a property in Southern California, buying a simple duplex here. I said, look, if you sell that condo down in Southern California, you buy this duplex here, you take that money from the 1031 exchange, throw it into the duplex, you put 200 grand down, your expenses are going to be less than $1,000 a month. You should do this. And it's about the numbers a lot of times, is really sort of laying it out. And I felt myself looking at, okay, at 76, what kind of expenses do you want at 78 and 80 and 82? Right? Where do you want to be? And so I think you and I are very much alike in terms of looking at that big picture. When you've got great grandkids, what when you're driving down the road with them, sometimes just having a great time, and you see property, do you talk to them about real estate? Do you talk to them about the long-term strategy, even at 15?
So I have Peyton every morning,
Uh-huh.
and I take her to school because her dad works in the refinery just across from me at Marathon. And he's there at 6 a.m. But I've had conversations with her about real estate. And this is why she said she's graduating from high school and going to Japan and traveling with her friends. She literally said to me, she says, my dad says that you're crazy, and I think you're crazy too. She says, I hear you on the telephone talking to these people, and I don't want to have anything to do with it. And I'm like, I said, yeah, but what about your dad? She goes, I have to get my dad to buy a house. I can't imagine I'm in high school and we don't own a house. I said,
Right.
see? She actually said that to me. It was like, okay. She goes, how do I buy a house? I said, so I've been walking through her what it takes to buy a house. And here's the thing about my grandson, Mr. I have everything perfect. If there's 5 boxes, he's checked all of them, and the 6th box is to go buy something. He makes more than enough money. He saves more than anybody I know. He's got excellent credit. He takes care of stuff, although he's not great at washing the dishes. He's like a lot of my buyers. They're actually afraid. And for my 2 great granddaughters, they're both in the same position. There is either a father or a mother who is not in the picture. Mm-hmm. And so there's only one thing for them. It's safety. Mm-hmm. Where do you want to live? What do you want to do? They both are on the principal's honor roll in 2 different schools. They both see themselves as traveling. They both see themselves in the medical profession, at least for now. But I try to explain to them why I'm still working. I made some mistakes. I had some things happen to me. And also I have this book that's out, and I'm not willing to leave to do that 100%, but I have all these book signings and things I'm doing, but I don't want them to make the same mistakes I did. I think that's the other thing is when you buy something that's really a great asset, don't sell it because you want to.
Right.
You do something with it and you change the disposition of that property. These are the words they use, by the way. These girls are crazy. like going to another property, and you and I haven't really talked about exchanges and the real value of an exchange and what happens when you sell a $600,000 property that you got for $200,000 so that you can take care of your family and you pay $100,000 in taxes versus exchanging it and figuring out a way maybe to borrow that money if you need to help your family. I'm not a school loan advocate, but I also don't want you taking $100,000 out so your child can go to school, get a degree in basket weaving, come home, stay on the couch and eat bonbons and wonder why they're not getting a job.
Right. Exactly. But the other thing too is you like what you do.
Oh yeah.
You really enjoy it. And anyone watching this and seeing you and hearing your passion, it's something you like to do. So I think even if you didn't have whatever life happened, you would still be doing this because you like it.
It goes all the way back. I mean, hey, I was in a room full of real estate agents and lenders at the core. I don't know if you know what the core is. It's one of the most amazing real estate coaching and lending coaching in the country. And he said, how many of you think you're realtors and lenders? And everybody, he says, no, you're not. That's your profession, your salespeople. And your product is real estate or finance. How do you see that? And when I look at myself and I think, okay, I can help people, especially rescue. Rescue is a lot of fun. It's like, I can make that happen.
Yeah.
Whether they accept it or not is up to them.
Yeah, exactly.
I can do something. One of the things I've been able to do though in these hundreds of renovations is I can look at this house and go, whoa, this is amazing, and come back and say, wow, what a transformation.
Yeah.
I want to bring up something because I'm not sure how much time we have. And you're a real estate investor. You represent people in 1031s. Sometimes it's simply just about the proper investment of income. So let's just say that you and I have a buyer and you and I are thinking the same thing, right? And let's say I'm not involved in the financing. Joe comes along and he says, God, Herb, Mitchell, I want to get this mortgage. I want to buy this rental property. I have about $200,000 in cash to work with. And we're thinking, okay, $600,000 house, $200,000, $3,000 payment, and a negative cash flow. Hey, Joe, that house that you own, that first rental that we helped you get, it's on 1/4 of an acre. If we build a 900 square foot ADU for $200,000,
right,
you'll get $2,000 a month from that, and it'll cost you about $1,400 or $1,500. That's an instant cash flow. Plus, and they're like, no, Mitchell, I don't want to do that because I don't want my in-laws living behind the house. But also, it's the perfect place for them. But what if you have a mother and father that are in their 70s and 80s, and they're not like me, where I'm a martial artist? I mean, I train every day. My wife is over 80. She's like the bomb. It's like, hey, build an ADU. I have seniors building ADUs so that they can move into them and put their kids in the front house and see their grandchildren and be part of their lives.
Right.
I
was just talking to someone about that this morning. And I grew up, my parents, my family came to the United States, and down the street, one direction was my great grandmother, and down the street, the other direction was my great grandmother and my grandmother, who lived together.
Wow.
And it was amazing because I had this circle, my grandfather, my uncles, and my aunts, typical Latino family, that hung out all the time over the weekends. But there's been so many studies that those grandparents who have that interaction, they live longer.
Yep.
They have a better quality of life. And so there is something to be said to say, okay, take that ADU and put grandma in it where she
Yep.
can, or grandpa in it where they can interact with their grandkids and really enjoy life.
There is 100% proof that having children in your life as a grandparent or a great grandparent gives you longevity.
Yes.
And then
Yeah.
according to my wife, she has to run up and down the stairs every day as well, because we live in a 2-story house. And the doctor said to her, says, you're in great shape. Just keep running up the stairs. And how are the great grandkids? Right.
Right.
And now, see, taking care of great grandchildren, I tell people I have great grandchildren. They're like, oh, that sounds so wonderful. And I said, no, they're telling my Peyton calls me and tells me what to eat. You're not
Exactly.
eating right. You need this vegetarian thing, or you're buying the wrong peanut butter. It's like, so she's one of these crunchy kids that eats all of this really great stuff, right?
Right. Right.
But you are right. I have to say something about the Latin and Asian culture. I know that there is an American culture, and I think that we could probably dig underneath and find out what it is. But it is more likely that you would find Latin grandparents and great grandparents living somewhere with their children or in direct proximity. I just closed a transaction across the street.
Mm-hmm.
And you are on a regular, what you and I will call American culture. We grow up, we move out, and we're gone. And we go visit our parents, and hopefully we get to see our grandparents. I have something that is so unusual for a lot of people because of my age. My wife is, I'm younger than my wife. She had 3 children when I met her. But I'm an integral part of my great-grandchildren and grandchildren's lives.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so many of us, we lose our grandparents when we're children, and we don't even know who our great-grandparents were.
Yeah. Yeah.
Having them live with you, having this history, how did you get here? What was your life like?
Yeah.
I know very little about my grandpa Morris. I know he left this little tiny town of only maybe 1,000 people in Russia, made it through into France, and came here in, I think, 1897. I don't know a lot else. I know that he was a furrier. I know that he was a trapper. It was one of those things. And all of his children ended up for a while in the rag business. Hey, we got to come here and we have to sell clothing. We need our families close to our lineage.
Yeah.
We cannot take care of our children's children unless we take care of the adults that brought us into this world.
Sure. Absolutely. I agree 100%. So I've got a couple of snap questions for you before we close here. Debt or equity?
Oh my. Wow. There are so many great financial planners out there. And even in Tony Robbins' new book, Money Master the Game, it's debt.
Debt.
Okay. If you think about, the one, of course, where you don't have a choice. You're a military veteran. You're buying a house for $600,000. You put 0 down, maybe even get the seller to pay your closing costs, right? And the house goes up 10% in 5 years. You made $60,000. So you have an immeasurable return on your money. Another guy comes in, says, I'm putting $300,000 down. He's got his loan, and the house goes up $60,000 over 5 years. Well, he made what? How much did he make on his $300,000? 20%, yep. Right? Yeah. The other guy made an infinitesimal amount. Now, it doesn't work all the time. If you're a real estate investor, you're required to put a certain amount down, but never put money down to get to a cash flow. Right. Because that means you're not buying the right property to begin with. Now, in California, listen, you got to have some latitude in that, because we know that you might not get that cash flow.
Right. A little different. All right. Taking the quick answers. ADU or ground up construction?
Man, both as an ADU, right? Ground up ADU or converting an extra building, definitely. Ground up construction, if you're talking about a single family dwelling, man, if you're married, go get counseling before you put a shovel in the dirt, because it is not an easy road. I have people where they were promised permits on a closed construction deal, 6 months to get your permits. I think if you go the ADU route, if you're an investor or if you're putting somebody in a home, it is so much easier. The state of California, as crazy as they are, have fostered this ability to do ADUs. Go buy a property in a community, you're still going to pay that $50,000 to $100,000 before you put a shovel in the ground, $10,000 or $15,000 or more for an architectural design, and you haven't started.
Yeah.
But if you've got a dream home idea, you're fairly well settled in your relationship, you know that you can make it through the construction of a brand new home, it's always a great idea. And even though I lose the business, please go look at brand new existing housing first before you decide to build a house.
So I had longtime friends who said there's nothing more to test a relationship, a marriage, than a remodel. Okay, so you've been in business 40 plus years.
Yes.
If someone listening today is trying to build wealth without making avoidable mistakes, right? What's the one principle that you would tell them to never forget?
This is actually pretty simple because I listen to this a lot. It is something that comes to me through rabbinical teaching. Mm-hmm. We never want to be rich. We build wealth, and wealth is generational.
Right.
When you're going to invest and you don't even have kids yet, but you know you're going to have a family, buy and invest with the idea that your children, some people don't care, right? But they don't care for all the wrong reasons. Buy so that your children can receive something of value for you. Invest in your family. Wealth is exactly what you and I have right now.
Right.
We are physically well. I'm in love with my wife. I wrote a book that is about our love story and other things that involved. There's no real estate in that book, but it's a beautiful book. But the idea is that when we create wealth, we've got our health, we've got our family, we have enough money to live. It might not mean that you can do anything you want. You have the opportunity to have a great life by building wealth. And when you seek riches, you only end up with riches. Maybe not all the time.
So let me go back because that was going to be my last question, but it reminded me of a question I was going to ask you earlier. There's lots of communities that did not get the education of wealth building, right? Communities of color, the lower income communities. What do you say to help that community to understand that it's baby steps, right? How do you, when you wind up learning or working with a client who's come from that, what do you say to them? How do you guide them?
That is such a wonderful question. I know people say that and go, oh, great question, Herb, but it is a good question because there is a universal language. Nobody can change the universal language. I don't want to learn from up there because that means that aliens are contacting us, but the universal language is math.
Yeah.
When you explain something to somebody and you show them what something will cost, what value it will bring to them, I mean, hey, when we're talking about other cultures, people coming here that somehow arrived here, I have multi-million-dollar clients who came here with an 8th grade education, and the only thing they knew was that 2 + 2 is 4. And when it doubles because you happen to own 4 and it becomes 800, that's $400,000 in equity. You don't have to explain that beyond the fact that it's time valued. And don't buy the most expensive house. But also, homeownership is not for everybody. When you're planning to have a family, you're not buying a 2-bedroom house.
Right.
When you're not planning to buy a family, you're not buying a 2,800 square foot house unless you need the library and the workout room and the sewing room because you're overbuying for what your needs are.
Right. Right.
Make your first purchase a little bit beyond what you need so that you can grow into it. But just those uneducated clients, let's just say that they're uneducated. And I'm going to pick a space without uneducated, and I'm sorry to make this long. It's the PhD client, the public high school diploma client that says, hey, I'm on this job. I'm making $30 an hour. My wife is on a secretarial position where she is the right and left hand of the owner, and she's also helps make decisions, and she's actually making $100,000 a year. What do we do with this $160,000 a year, and how do I turn it into a home without overbuying? And so, and this is such a good part to do this. In conversations I have about my book, the only time you sit next to your wife is when you're with another couple, so your wife can talk to the woman while you're talking to the guy. You sit across from your wife in every financial conversation. And when you go out to dinner, you can't reach across the table and have her touch your hands if she's sitting next to you. And you're always going like this. Have a conversation and sit in front of people. I sit here. I never sit at the head of anybody's table. And they invite me to because they think that's a spot for me. So I'd rather sit across from you. And I get to look at them, and I ask them, say, hey, why don't you check with each other? Take a look at each other and see what you're thinking.
Sure.
So that we are making a uniform decision together with my assistance, not me making the choice.
Right. Exactly.
That's a big thing for me. And it's important that they participate. But the simplest thing is, does the math work? Can you afford this? And if the answer is yes, then let's proceed to find out how this will work.
Yeah.
And I just want to leave people with another thought here. I know that there's a lot going on. We never write offers. We don't write offers. We write contracts. Every single offer is a contract. But if you go in with the idea, you write a contract, contracts get accepted, offers get rejected or countered.
Right.
Make your best possible effort, and don't come in with some goofy ass number because it's been on the market for 2 weeks. Let your realtor guide you to that number.
Right. Exactly.
That professional agent.
I could have you on here for another hour. So many side conversations I could have with you, but I got to wrap. So folks, that's a wrap. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more raw, real financial talk in the Sandbox. Mitchell, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure and an honor. And I hope that my audience really listens to what you say, because I've heard you sitting here waiting to ask you another question. I've had to listen and change my questions because you've been so deep and thorough. Thanks for joining me.
I'd love to come back and really get deep into renovation, because it really is a joy for some people to create their own palace.
Yeah.
You use that one word, it is an honor. It's always amazing when I'm invited onto a show and to be able to participate.